Andy, you are someone you've got extensive experience following sort of Antifa and other marches and protests, some very Black Lives Matters, and there's extraordinary events been going on in America over the years, often also in Europe. And you were there on Saturday. Who were you following and who were you most concerned about on the day?
Well, I primarily was documenting the Million Man March for
It
Palestine.
wasn't a million man, it was 300,000 in the end, wasn't it?
Yes. So what I noticed is that, like previous weeks of these demonstrations, the violence happens at night. And by then, that's when the journalists from the mainstream outlets are home and have already completed their stories and the headlines are out.
They've gone along, they've got their footage and they said it's all fine, and then they've gone home.
Yeah, what I witnessed again were acts of, well, I should say pockets of violence, but were predictable and in line with things, in my view, that the former Home Secretary had described these demonstrations before. Violence against police, shooting mortar fireworks at law enforcement, firing fireworks at cars that were
Firework
stuck
is
in
a weapon.
Yes, I mean, people get injured from it. These are huge, I mean, it's really shocking when one of them lands right next to you and it's explosive, right? It can burn you, it can blind you, it can disorient you.
And we know one police officer still in hospital, actually, after being hit by a firework in the eye. There were 145 arrests on Saturday. Now, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, ex-Home Secretary, I should say, she had warned that these protests were, you know, provocative and they were aggressive and the anti-Semitic chanting was unacceptable. You know, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is an anti-Semitic chant. It's about this. Hamas is a prescribed terrorist organisation. That is their chant, and it's used to say we want destruction of Israel and indeed of the Jewish people. That is what their aim is in their founding documents. So she warned about what was going on there. It was then claimed, and it has been claimed even today, even by the likes of the shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting, that she's entirely to blame, he said, and has poured petrol on the flames of these protests by basically riling up the right-wing elements, so the football hooligans, the sort of former English Defence League right-wingers, and others to sort of basically send the Bother boys to the cenotaph, to protect the cenotaph, and to basically take on these pro-Palestinians, but also the police. We did see trouble among those people, not actually at the cenotaph, where it was very peaceful and people were respectful, but we did see trouble. I am told, I was not there, I was told by numerous reporters who were there, the police chose to kettle those protesters, and therefore that led to some ructions. I don't think their behaviour was, the behaviour of the protesters was remotely acceptable. I don't think they did anyone any good. But do you agree with the Home Secretary when she's talked about playing favourites and two-tier policing, that the decision to take on right-wing, far-right protesters in one way with the police, very proactive, very involved, very aggressive policing, but the policing of the pro-Palestinian march, completely different, even with the sometimes caught on video most outrageous anti-Semitism on display?
What I witnessed was that the Met Police were very quick to take out and use their batons against the mob, if you will, of the right-wing protesters. And indeed, some of them were bloodied. Whereas similar actions of pushing back against police lines by pro-Palestine demonstrators in previous weeks were met with a much softer approach.
Quite clearly a different approach. Now, the claim seems to be that there are more of them. We haven't got enough police officers. We can't take it on. We've got our drones. We've got our people with cameras. We're going to get the people afterwards who've committed trouble. We can arrest them later. That is often the style of policing, and yet we didn't see that with the far right element.
Yeah, and I mean that perception has led to the anger among some of the people who showed up around and outside the cenotaph in Westminster. And I'm a bit shocked, or perhaps not shocked, but surprised to see the former Home Secretary being blamed for the things that happen around Westminster by the
Is it your experience that the far right, and again, you have covered I mean, probably thousands of different marches over the years. You're very youthful, but you have been around following this stuff up close and personal. You've been attacked yourself, left and the right. The idea that a bunch of basic racist thugs weren't going to go to the cenotaph, were going to sit at home, or go, I don't know, to the local shopping centre or a football match, but an ethnic minority Home Secretary told them, oh, well, I think there's going to be trouble. And they all went, oh, in that case, I'm going to turn up at the cenotaph. Do you think that's likely?
Well, when I was in the morning, when I was just paying attention to the conversations that were happening with the people that had gathered around there, their anger seemed to be directed at what they viewed as the Met Police allowing weeks of disrespect on monuments and
people put draping Free Palestinian flags on the cenotaph. People, even there was one where it was daubed Free Palestine on, ahead of the weekend of remembrance.
Yeah, I mean, I witnessed somebody mentioning being radicalized by the words of the former Home Secretary in the Times newspaper. I mean, in fact, I think her criticisms bore out over the weekend, and some other instances that I witnessed from the pro-Palestinian side were really quite shocking, disturbing, if you will. In Victoria Station, there was a mobbing of Michael Gove.
Yes, the Levelling Up Secretary. You were there. You took
there.
some of the footage that we've seen online of Michael. He was walking to the station. Now, there have been claims, even by some, frankly, national broadcasters, I think it's quite shocking, saying this was staged. Apparently, he was trying to get to the train. He couldn't. He does take the train. Most ministers and others do. He couldn't get through because there were road closures. So he got out and walked. He was mobbed in the street with people shouting, "Shame on you! Shame on you!" Police had to surround him. He walks into Victoria Station. He actually basically has to be bustled away by the police because of the aggressive behaviour and chanting. I mean, that's completely unacceptable in a democracy.
Yeah, the anger from these protesters at Victoria Station. I mean, they didn't just. In addition to targeting Michael Gove, they targeted people who were wearing patriotic pins as well. I mean, I witnessed...
Wearing poppies?
Yes. There was an elderly couple who were accosted, and then they had to be taken away by police because this mob was just becoming angry.
So, wait a minute. So they were selling poppies, doing what people were wearing... No, wearing poppies.
Wearing.
And they were not... You videoed this. I think I've seen this footage. You videoed them. They weren't attacking the mob or these pro-Palestinian protesters. They were just wearing poppies.
They were showing their respect for veterans on...
and they were led away, but the pro-Palestinian group were allowed to continue. This is exactly what Suella Braverman talked about. Two-tier policing.
Yes.
That is not what happened in... No, there's no doubt that there are still hunts going on, manhunts for various people who committed horrible anti-Semitic acts and chanting and flags and insignia on the day, but also some right-wingers shouting horrible things and being racist. I mean, and I want all of them arrested. I want them all treated the same way. What do you make of the idea, though, that we've got Channel 4 reporting, it's all about the racist mob at Cenotaph, and BBC saying it was a largely peaceful event? But it's only peaceful because the police don't challenge the criminality, which is clearly and utterly... It's not two people on a march of 300,000. It is clearly hundreds, if not a few thousand people on these marches who are shouting and chanting and showing racist, anti-Semitic, racist insignia and the like. If you only watch Channel 4, you only read The Guardian or see the BBC website, you will think one event happened. The day's events came off a certain way. If you use other media as well, you will know a completely different story. That is very dangerous territory, isn't it? If we can't even all agree what happened.
Well, I mean, the firewall of the mainstream media is being broken through independent and citizen journalists who are just out there recording incidents that the BBC is not at, Channel 4 is not at, ITV is not at.
And they can't be every single place. But just because they didn't witness it themselves, if it's on video and then they're denying it's happened.
Yeah, but these incidents are not particularly even hard to find. You just show up and you see it all over. And I think, I mean, the media and activists are falling back on familiar narratives about the far left when previous weeks people have been forced to confront a very uncomfortable reality. Again, I think questions about immigration, integration.
Yeah. Oh, no, we can't discuss that because that makes us all xenophobic, racist bigots. I mean, that's what's going on in this country. We have to pretend we can't have that conversation is too dangerous.